Welcome to Pekin Community High School for a regular Board of Education meeting. If you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will start with the call to order. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Allison Breedy.
Here.
Vera.
Here.
Hoheimer.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Huey.
Here.
Wrigley.
Here.
Bill.
Here. All members of the board are present. We do have a quorum. So the next item of business will be the approval of minutes. Those minutes being the Labor Management Relations Committee meeting of October 6th, Student Achievement Committee meeting of October 19th, Policy Committee meeting of October 24th, regular board meeting of October 24th, closed session board meeting October 24th, special board meeting of November 1st, closed session of the special board meeting of November 1st, and a special board meeting of November 7th. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Allison Breedy.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Bill.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next item of business will be communication and public comments. Starting with board applause, Mr. Howard, I'm sorry. Would you go ahead, please?
Mr. President, I don't have one tonight.
Okay. Mr.
Well,
Hughes?
I'm going to make up for it. Mine's long enough that I even typed it up this afternoon. Miss Cassidy's Culinary Arts classes teamed up with 2 of the work seminar classes to prepare 210 dozen rolls and 70 cheesecakes for Thanksgiving. The work seminar students learn food preparation, sanitary techniques, applied math and measurement, and workplace soft skills while producing a much desired product. To quote Miss Cassidy, many of the cheesecakes and rolls were for in-house people, but a great many of them went out to the community, giving the public another resource and positive experience with PCHS. The students were paid in rolls. Each student that worked was given their own Thanksgiving rolls, although Miss Cassidy wasn't sure that they all made it home.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Hoheimer?
None tonight.
All right. Going on around, Mr. Wrigley?
None for me this evening.
Mr. Allison Green?
The fall sports banquet was last week ago, Monday, I guess. Congratulations to all those students that participated in our fall sports.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barrow?
To piggyback on Mr. Huey's applause, our family enjoyed 2 of the cheesecakes, and one of my sons enjoyed 3 dozen of the rolls, all before dinner, so very good.
Thank you very much. And my board applause tonight is actually, I was asked to give a special recommendation to Mr. White for his help setting up the Friends in Harmony. I believe this is the first year they're utilizing the facilities here, and they had very nice things to say about you and how great you've been to work with. So on behalf of the district, thank you, Mr. White, for letting a community group come in and utilize our great facilities here. Next up will be our student council report. Amanda.
Hi there. In the past couple weeks, we've been pretty busy. We had the Life Skills Party and the canned food drive. And during the Life Skills Party, we provided lunch for the students that are involved in the Life Skills programs. And I personally worked the field hockey. It was just an activity and games for them to play. And I worked there, and the students took turns trying to hit the puck into the goal. So it was fun hanging out with them all during 5th hour. And then we also had the canned food drive last week on Tuesday, where we delivered canned goods and Thanksgiving dinners to over 100 families throughout Pekin. Next week, we have the Winter Spirit Week, and that's December 5th through the 9th. Monday is Snowed-In Day, Tuesday is Tacky Holiday Sweater, Wednesday is Holiday Character Day, Thursday is Winter Sports Day, and Friday is Pekin Spirit, like usual. And we are working on an idea for a mitten tree here at school where students will bring mittens or hats or gloves and put it on a tree to give to charity. And we also have Santa calls next week on Wednesday and Thursday, and the student council kids will be calling kids from elementary schools, and we pretend to be elves. And we basically just ask them what they want for Christmas and if they've been good this year, and it's really fun. And we just like make up a name, and yeah, that's all we have so far.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a busy end of your year, so
Yes.
thank you all for what you're doing. Next item of business will be public comments. At this time, anybody wishing to address the board on a non-agenda item may do so. If you'd like to address the board, please come up, say your name, and you'll be given 5 minutes to address the board.
I figured it out this time. Good evening. I'm Norma Jacobs. I'm here again to address the transgender issue. I'm not satisfied at all with the way that it's coming down. I want to thank you, though, for allowing me to talk. I believe the policy disregards common sense, the basic privacy issues, and I want to address a large number and a large group of unintended victims. The victims are sexual abuse survivors. I don't know if you really thought about that. After working at Tazewell County State's Attorney's Office for about 15 years and seeing how many cases of aggravated criminal sexual abuse are handled just in our county alone, it's just overwhelming. It's hard to comprehend. 1 in 5 girls under the age of 12 is sexually assaulted or attempted. Even if a transgender student would not attempt to do something like that, or even consider it, there are many girls in that locker room who have been and don't want to take their clothes off around a different sex. In fact, for me, even undressing in front of other girls was rather difficult because I didn't meet all the safe values. Knowing that many girls in this place and knowing that they have and don't want to draw attention to themselves, they already feel different by their shame and their hurt. I don't feel this mandate is protecting all students at all, especially when it's providing for one student. And for a girl to be told that if she doesn't like it, she can use the unisex bathroom. I feel that this was a very sneaky thing, first of all, to ever allow the transgender student in the 5th hour PE class with no warning. I wonder how many of you'd like to show up in that locker room and have a person of the opposite sex in there and to be expected to carry on. I just found that very amazing. I'm very interested to hear the protocol and who is in fact qualified to make the decision of who is a transgender. I've kind of heard back and forth different things, but I was told that I would hear from someone, and of course I did not. I really wasn't all that surprised. I do have great compassion for all transgender students who don't always fit the molds, because not very many of us do. I also feel as though even if you do agree with me, that none of you really have or could say anything because you feel the money would be withheld. And I kind of think that's the bottom line. It's all about the money. I believe that the transgender students' rights have been met and were met with the unisex bathroom. And I just cannot get over the fact that a girl is told if she doesn't like it, she should use that bathroom, when it has female on her birth certificate and the door, and plate on the door says female. thank you for listening to me. I plan on giving up anytime soon. I would like to hear back from someone who might have some input that I'm not aware of. But I'm really, really, really disappointed.
Mrs. Jacobs, thank you for your comments. I want to make sure that we're responding to any questions that you asked. So one of the questions that I took away, and if you have more, please let me know. But you want to hear the protocol on who can make the calls for the students that is classified as transgender. That was the question that I heard in there. I would be happy to reach out to you and let you know how the policy handles that. Is there any other questions that you have on the matter?
Well, I do. I realize that Title IX is a 44-year-old law. And when that law was written, there was no way transgender was even anywhere near that issue. But it has been pushed into it. When that law was written, it didn't have anything to do with that. So just don't know how. I realize that President Obama was the one who pushed this mandate through, but it doesn't mean that I have to accept that this is right or moral. And I find it interesting that you can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with one nation under God, and then it's like he's thrown out the door. I do pray for you, and I thank you again for listening to me.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board on a non-agenda item? If they do, go ahead and stand up now.
Eric, I want to tell you I appreciate your timely response and your reply. I really do appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And of course, I'd have a bit more time to.
And sorry, before you get started, can you go ahead and say your name?
Yes,
so we have it on record?
Brad Trubisky. And you've got my other information, I think, already in file. Okay. But I thought I needed to stand up and speak up for the truth, to expose the foolishness and harmfulness of such a lie that a male or a female can, by thinking or saying they identify as the opposite sex, changes their gender, changes what they were born. That we ought to be moved to help those caught in such a lie. We should help them identify with the truth and not ourselves fall into such a foolishness or the foolishness of the lie, that deceptive behavior, and a harmful duplicity. Mankind's history is strewn with the perversion of truth. This is no different. I hope to refresh your minds, your souls, with the one who tells us what he has made us, male and female, our Creator. And the ones who have from the beginning of time applied that truth, our forefathers and foremothers. A lie never changes what is true. However, and thankfully, there is a way to be reborn, but even that doesn't change one's gender. Now, I have more questions too, and I'm not through, but those will be written out, and I will seek out the superintendent and those of you individually, because I would like to know where you stand on this issue. I wasn't here when this transpired. I made it over to the Morton School Board meeting that they had here just recently, and I got to hear 32 people stand up and speak, which I thought was very impressive. Just that they had that whole process. I don't know if you had that here, but I thought that was very impressive. I didn't like the outcome, but I thought it was well done. And I shared with each of the board members there that I was very thankful that they did that. And I myself did not get up and speak because I'm not a resident of Morton, but I noticed that there was a lot who did get up and speak who were not members of that community. And I thought that was a bit of a mistake. So with that, I'll cease till now, and hope to be able to meet with each of you sometime. Eric, this is for you. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other board or any other members that wish to address the board on a non-agenda item? If so, please stand up and address us now. All right, next item of business will be our audit report.
Ms. Schaefer is handing out a report to you. I'll let you have it back before I start speaking.
You and Lori?
Pardon me?
And you are Lori?
I am. My name is Lori Salmi. I'm with the accounting firm Phillips Salmi and Associates. We're located in Washington. First, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak at your meeting. And secondly, I would like to thank Mrs. Schaefer and her staff. They worked very hard helping us to finish the audit. And it was a very pleasant experience for me, which is hard to say on an audit. And hopefully it wasn't too rough on them. So I really appreciate that. A couple housekeeping items before I discuss this report that's in front of you. We have prepared the annual financial statements. And those, I believe that each of you have a copy of. It's approximately a 60-page document. In addition to that, we have also prepared the annual financial report, the AFR, that is required to be submitted to ISBE. That has been submitted to the Regional Superintendent's Office, and it also has been uploaded to ISBE's website and has been accepted. A third item that also must be prepared as a part of the audit is a federal single audit, and that is a special audit that is over your federal grant program. In the past, the threshold for that audit was $500,000. It was raised to $750,000, and you are still over that threshold, so we also performed that single audit. And that data collection form has been submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse, and it was also accepted. So those three reports have been separately issued. So what I'd like to do is cover the small report, because I didn't really think that you wanted to cover 80 pages and 60 pages and then the data collection form. So I prepared just a summary of things that are required to be communicated to you. If you wouldn't mind flipping to page 1. This report is the report over internal control and over compliance with law. The auditor's responsibility is to evaluate internal control and to determine whether our audit procedures are being performed to identify any material misstatements of the financial statements. If in performing that audit, we identify material weaknesses in your internal control or significant deficiencies, we're required to communicate those to you. And not working in the accounting profession, I assume it's difficult to understand what a material weakness is or a significant deficiency. Those are defined as deficiencies, or a material weakness is defined as a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control, that there's a reasonable possibility that your financial statements will be misstated, and that there are no measures that will prevent or detect those weaknesses or errors. A significant deficiency is a lower threshold. Those are deficiencies or a combination of deficiencies that have been identified that we as auditors feel are of the significance that we should communicate to you. I'm happy to report we didn't find any of those types of weaknesses. Your internal control structure has been designed in an effective manner, and it's operating reasonably efficiently. We perform tests of your internal control structure. When we're performing the audit, we select samples over payroll, we select samples over cash disbursements, we're looking at activity funds, and we identified no issues when we were performing those procedures. That is accomplished by our accounting staff. In addition, on page 2, we also are required to test for compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants that have a material effect over the financial statements. And again, we did not identify any issues. In the prior year, there was also a finding in the Single Audit Act over federal nutrition program. It looks like that finding from the past, we had to specifically test for that as part of the single audit, and it looked like that finding had been corrected. We did not have any issues over that area when we performed testing this year. The next report, or excuse me, financial letter on page 3. This is a standard report that's required by auditors to issue to the board. And in that report, there are each of the subheadings, those are required to be communicated. The qualitative aspects of the accounting practices. Included in that is whether any accounting policies had changed, any new accounting pronouncements were implemented. There were none this year. In the prior year, you had a new accounting policy over pension disclosures. That's been implemented and there were no new ones this year. Also, whether there were any difficulties in performing the audit and the corrected and uncorrected financial statements, the adjusting journal entries that we proposed. We did propose a couple journal entries. They were insignificant and mostly they were moving items from one account to another to more accurately reflect where they should be on the annual financial report. In total, they were insignificant, but Carla and I had, Mrs. Schaefer, excuse me, and I had discussed them prior to us booking them. So those have all been taken care of. And we had no other audit findings during our audit procedures. Typically, when I talk to a board, if you look at page 6, the thing boards normally care about is where were they at for the financial profile. You have a recognition status, which obviously is a very good thing. And as I look forward to your budget for the coming year, I would not anticipate that that would change. I believe you will also have recognition status. The only thing that I potentially see that would throw you out of that would be if your expenditures to revenue ratio changes significantly. But I think you have a lot of room in that I don't expect that you would change from recognition status, just looking at your budget. By the way, the threshold for lowering down below recognition is a 3.53, and you're currently at a 3.55. If you look at page 7 and 8, this is where I gave you a 5-year summary of the financial statements. And if you want me to talk about it, I can talk about it in a lot of detail, but I have looked at what's been presented to the board as part of your budget package for the last 2 years. And I can tell you from looking at that, the information that you've been provided in detail is very accurate. And as also from the journal entries that were very insignificant. So I don't really want to spend a lot of time with that. I do want to point out one item at the bottom of the page. Your operating expense per pupil, that one's hard for me to say, for 2015 was $10,680. And I'm wondering if you've ever looked at that statistic, but all high schools, all districts in the state of Illinois are ranked as to what their operating expense per pupil is. And it's ranked by elementary, unit district, and high school. You are ranked number 87 out of 98. And the ranking goes from the most expensive school to least expensive school. So you are about the 11th least expensive school for operating expense. And that's, I think, a very significant thing to point out to you. You've been very efficient with your money. Now that is based on 2015. And that is what?
Tell me again, 87 out of 90?
87 out of 98.
Yeah, there's only 98 unit districts.
High school districts.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
No, I mean,
98.
But high school.
High school districts.
Thank you. That's a wonderful statistic. By the way, my son's a CPA. I've known Carla for more years than I can say. And all of you get this look on your face when you're swimming in your numbers. And I, as a board member, and I think I speak for the rest of the board, we're thrilled that you do that. And that you boil it down and condense it down and make it into meaningful sentences so we know if we're going right, wrong, or indifferent. And I appreciate it.
Thank you. I typically look at it from what would I want to know if I'm the board? And I don't really want to know all the numbers because I have a feeling during the budget process, and I've seen the PowerPoint presentation, the slides, you get a lot of that information. What I'm telling you is that information that you received was accurate, so feel very comfortable in relying on it. And then that we, during our audit procedures, we had no significant problems. We performed a significant number of tests. Where Carla and her staff, she can tell you, but we had really no issues. The procedures are operating effectively, and they don't know what we're going to test. It's a random sample. So that's something I think you need to be aware of, that what they're telling me as an internal control procedure is actually what's being done.
I think it's a delicate balance.
It is.
You want to give us enough to keep us engaged, but don't give us so much that you drown us out. And I think that's a narrow path, and you're doing very well.
Oh, thank you. So if you want to flip to page 9.
I will.
What I try to do is, here's how you're receiving money. I put it in a color chart so you can really see where you're receiving money from. Property taxes by far is where you're receiving your money. If you would have looked at this 5-6 years ago, the slice that was federal and state expenditures would have been more significant. Unfortunately, as the state and our federal government has declined in what the funding is, your property taxes are having to cover the shortfalls. And that's how that percentage plays out. And the replacement tax is part of that also. You can somewhat look at that as more a state tax than anything else. But your residents are having to pay for a significant portion of your funding, and you're trying to use that money effectively by being ranked number 87. On page 10, this is how you're using your money. You're using your money, the gold regular program instruction. Those are your regular high school programs. In the other instruction, which is the red, that's special education, vocational education. And then under your other support services, that would be items like guidance, food services, the business office. So obviously from looking at this, the majority of your money is being spent on the students, on the programs. Then the other items that go along with having a school, you have to pay for your transportation. That's down in the purple. The debt service that you have that you've had to do to maintain your facilities, your facility costs, and then your fire prevention and safety, which is also some of your facilities costs. That's the remainder. So that's where your money is going. Does anyone have any other questions or things that you are curious about as part of the audit process?
I really like your pie charts. I mean, we look at the numbers, but that says the message rapidly.
Any other board members have any questions? Well, thank you very much to your team for their hard work, and thank you to Mrs. Schaefer and your team for getting all the information and continuing to prove that what we're doing here and what we're practicing is working, not only in our eyes, but also in our auditor's eyes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, the next item of business will be approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payment of the monthly warrants in the amount of $1,945,305.44 per summary information found on page 53. Board bills listing begins on page 83 and manual checks on page 116.
Motion by Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second by Mrs. Hoheimer? Any questions or comments? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Phil.
Aye. Motion carries. Monthly warrants are approved. Next item of business is a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimonies on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, student discipline cases, and litigation when action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Howard, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Howard.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Bill.
Aye. Motion carries, and we will be back as soon as we can. We're now back in regular session. Next item of business will be our consent agenda. Looking for board approval to approve the certified, substitute certified, differential, and chaperone volunteers. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Huey, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Huey.
Yes.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Bill.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item of business will be student discipline.
Mr. President, I move that a student being identified as 160917 be expelled from Pekin Community High School for the remainder of the 16-17 school year, eligible to return fall of 2017 for reasons of gross misconduct.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Howard. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item of business will be action on IEA grievance.
Mr. President, I would move to partially grant the association grievance by amending the last paragraph of the notice of direction to clarify that the notice represents a management directive to the employee and is not discipline.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mr. Wrigley. Any questions or comments? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item of business will be policies for first reading. Mr. Wrigley.
The policy committee is submitting 3 policies for first read. Those policies are 270, 6100, and 6235. The recommendation is to lay over these policies for action at a future meeting.
That recommendation comes from policy, so it does not require a second. Any comments or questions? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Wrigley.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye. Motion carries. Policies are laid over. Next item of business will be the approval of a date change for the 2017 close-up trip to Washington, D.C. Dr. Owens.
So you have already approved this trip that is annually taken out of our social studies department, but you will see on page 175 there was a need to switch the date of this trip to coincide with specific needs of one of our students. So we would just like to, the trip will be the exact same, other than the dates will change. The only, I think, outcome of that is it will fall during a national testing date, so some of the students on the trip will have to make up some tests that they missed, but otherwise we think that it'll have a positive effect for everybody. It did change the cost per student of the trip, which the students fundraise for to pay for that cost, but the district has agreed to pay the cost of the change made. The difference of that cost we will pick up. I think it's a total of maybe $2,000. for the change of tickets to a different day. But otherwise, that's what the recommendation is for us for you to approve the date change from April 23rd to the 28th to April 2nd to the 7th. So that'll be right before, that'll go right into spring break.
Motion for approval.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Holheimer. Any questions or comments?
Tell me again, Dr. Owens, that it was changed because of circumstances of one student?
We have accommodations needed for a student, and the only week we could get those accommodations to be met through the close-up facilitators is to change weeks, because the accommodation that is needed isn't offered on the week that we had slated. And so because of that, we felt the need to change to make sure that the student was accommodated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Ridley.
Aye.
Holheimer.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Vera. Aye. Howard.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye. Motion carries. Date of the close-up trip has been changed. Next item of business will be Unland Insurance Renewal. Mrs. Schaefer.
Our insurance comes due December 1st, so typically in October, I work with Unland Insurance on our renewal package, and then we meet in early November to go over the renewal. And so our insurance is with Liberty Mutual, and we're renewing. The recommendation is to renew with Liberty Mutual. You'll see on page 176 the side-by-side comparison to what we're currently, what our total is that's expiring versus the renewal. So I'm happy to report that we're going down this year. Last year, our package was $385,000. This year, it's going to be $341,000. Most notably, that decline came in the work comp section of the insurance. The work comp is driven by what they call an experience mod, and for the first time in a few years, ours is below 1, which is really good. It's kind of a rolling average, and so it keeps histories of claims on there, I think, for 4 years. So we've had some higher claims drop off, which in turn has dropped our mod. So that's helped with the renewal. So the recommendation this evening would be to renew the district's insurance package through Liberty Mutual for an annual premium of $341,286 as presented.
You heard the recommendation from the administration. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Barra, second by Mr. Alessandrini. Any questions or comments? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Vera.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Holheimer.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item of business, estimated tax levy. Mrs. Schaefer.
You should have in the board book section the presentation, and I'll bring it up here too for everybody to see. Hopefully you'll be able to see this okay. Go ahead and get started. So this is the presentation for our 2016 taxes payable in 2017, which will actually affect our 2017-2018 budget. The taxes that are levied for 2016 actually come out normally in May, in the spring of 17, and the due dates are June and September, but we don't get our first disbursement from the county treasurer until July of 17. So that basically so everything then hits our 17-18 budget. The CPI for this year's levy is 0.7%. And just as a reminder, we are a PTEL district, which means we can only increase the dollars that that are collected over prior year. It's limited to the lesser of CPI or 5%. And so obviously we're well below 5%. This next slide, which is hard to see on here, but you should be able to see it in your information. This is just kind of a history of where we've been over the last several years. I think there's only been a few years. There was a year back in 2007 where we were a little over 4%, but very rarely have we ever been, especially in the last few years, been anywhere close to that 5%. This is a history of our EAV, the equalized assessed value of properties that feed into Pekin High School. This is just a graph that shows kind of what it's looked like since 2007 through what we're estimating for 2016. We did have a little over 1% increase in EAV from last year. Last year's EAV was about 632 million. This year, we're estimating about 641 million. The current year EAV also includes an estimated $5.5 million in new property. I did reach out to the supervisor of assessments for Tazewell County just to ask, because it's not typical that we've seen such an increase in EAV, and he did explain to me that there was a 1% equalization factor applied to Pekin Township this year. Also parts of Elm Grove, Groveland, and Cincinnati Township, which also feed into District 303. And this was the first positive factor that we've seen since 2010. So that's a lot of the reason for the increase in the EAV. He also indicated that farmland that feeds into 303 went up a little over $1.3 million in EAV. This slide just shows the new property values. They are down a little bit over last year. We're about 700,000 down from 2015. You'll note 2010, just as a reminder, I think I've talked about this in the past, but because it's so obvious that year is so much higher, what happened in that year is that we had a TIF that expired. And so when you have property that's in a tax increment financing district and it comes off, those dollars come on as new property, and that was about $2.8 million in that year, so that's why that looks a little different. This is just the calculation that we call the limiting rate calculation. So basically, you go through and you figure out what your evaluation was the previous year and what your prior extension was, and you take it times your CPI and all these fun numbers that are up there, but ultimately what you get down to is a limiting rate. And so at the bottom you'll see 1.9113, and that rate is important because when you're a PTEL district, new property is not limited by CPI, but it is limited by this limiting rate, and so that's why this calculation is important. So all the new property that came on rolls for 2016 is limited to a rate of 1.9113 versus the 0.7. And this spreadsheet has a lot of figures on it, but I tried to highlight a few things in red that are circled that I think are the most important parts of this slide. So basically what this is doing, the calculation that this is doing is it's taking all of our values from 2015. It's figuring out what our extension is based on CPI, and it's also figuring out what we're going to get from new property tax dollars. And so the highlights on this slide include the capped increase. So we're capped at an increase of $190,220. That's what we're estimating. And we're expecting an increase of about 1.57%, and that excludes bonds. The other thing that's important on here that I just want to point out is, if you'll remember a few years ago when we talked about going out and issuing bonds for all of our health, life, safety work, part of that strategy was to be able to keep that rate consistent, and we wanted to keep it around 23-25 cent mark, and depending on EAV that's going to fluctuate, but you will see that again this year. Last year that rate was 0.2388, this year we're at 0.2378, and that was the goal, to try to keep that consistent from year to year while we're doing all this work, so that the taxpayers aren't seeing a huge fluctuation every year in their property tax bill. So I think that's important also to point out. So ultimately, in that red circle that has the rates, at the bottom you'll see a rate of 2.1481, and that's where we're predicting our rate to be. This is just a graph to show you what the history of the tax rates have looked like since 2007. You'll see is what happened really since 2011 is EAV really had no growth at all. So what that did was pushed the tax rate up in order to maximize the tax dollars that we're getting, because there was less EAV to spread that across. Now this year, because our EAV did go up a little bit, we were able to still capture all of our dollars and keep the rate the same. So that $1.91 represents the rate that was on the previous page, but excluding the bonds. And this is just the summary. Essentially, every year obviously the funds there to the left are the funds that that we're allowed to put tax dollars in, and so we go through and project where we need the funds and the dollar amounts in those funds. Typically, every year it's been practiced that what I present to you is where I feel the numbers will be, but that's all based on information that we're getting from the assessor and the county clerk and all of those things that you're assuming are right numbers, but there's always things in there that could change if people are if they're arguing over their EAB or something comes up where there's a change in that, you just don't know that you don't have not everything's going to be dollar for dollar. So typically what we've done in the past is we always put a buffer in there, and so when we actually take the levy and certify it with the county clerk, we have a buffer. And so in December, what we'll present to you is the formal tax levy form that has to be filed with the county clerk, and what we'll put on there is the column to the right. So we expect that we'll have an extension of $12 million, a little over $12 million, but we'll ask for about $12.1 million in order to make sure we're capturing all that revenue. We won't, obviously, if the numbers don't work out, we're not going to get $12.1 million if it doesn't work out. They always, the extension in the PTEL will bring you back down to what your accurate number is, which, like I said, we expect to be just a little over $12 million. The next slide, we talk about the fee waiver, which we've talked about for the last several years. You'll see on there that we have waived student fees since 2006, 2007. Last few years, we've had a lot of conversation around the fee waiver. We are just about 50% free and reduced, and so we always factor in, okay, well, what would it look like if we're still charging that $75 per student, but we waived that potentially 50% of free and reduced. It'd be about $75,000 probably in revenue that we would collect. And while we feel like that's important, I think as we've discussed administratively, that we do intend to implement or continue to talk through our technology committee about going one-to-one, and we feel like we need to coincide that fee when we implement that fee again, that it needs to be tied to a technology fee. And so this year we would recommend again in December when we bring the fees to you that we would not charge that fee for the 17-18 school year, but know that that fee will be back in place when we start to implement the technology and go one-to-one. So just in summary, we will have board action on the levy at the December 19th meeting. At that time, I'll present to you the actual file of the certificate of levy form that has to be filed with the county clerk. We're not required to have a public hearing or the truth in taxation because we're not requesting an increase over 5%. And so in that case, we don't have to do any of the public hearing. So in December, assuming that I don't have any major information coming to light in the next few weeks, then the levy form will look like as I presented tonight. That's all I have.
Any board members have any questions of Mrs. Schaefer? Thank you very much. Next item of business, we'll move on to reports, starting with resignations. Mr. Wrigley.
The board would like to make a matter of record 3 names that have been submitted for resignation. Ryan Geist, Assistant Principal for Operations, effective 20 December. Chris Peterson, Assistant Coach for the football program, effective at the end of 2016-2017 school year. And Denise Teeny, Branch Finance Office Clerk, effective 22 November at the end of the workday.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. You want to continue on with Policy Committee?
Yeah, it was a very, very long report. We did not meet this evening. But I would venture to say probably soon. Have you spoken? January. That was a pretty big press packet, if I'm not mistaken, that we got. So
it will be my homework over Christmas break.
Okay.
So yeah, expect a policy meeting sometime January, February, maybe March.
Enjoy your break. Okay, now in January. Mr. Allison Drinking, Operations Maintenance.
We have no report.
All right.
We will meet in December.
Oh.
Just want to keep everyone in the loop, though. We have several bids that will be coming up in December. We continue to meet with the architects and the technology people and everything around the library, bless you, the library renovation. So I think it's fair to say that's going to be a very expensive project, because every time we meet, it's a lot of figures being thrown at us, and we're trying to be as cheap as we can, but we also, on the flip side of that, really do want this to be a focal point in our school, and try to do, since we're going to spend the time and the money, to make sure we do it right, and that it's a usable facility for several years to come, obviously. So just, I guess I'm warning you before you get sticker shock the next time you walk in, that potentially is going to be a project that's going to be a substantial amount of money. But we'll have more specifics, obviously, at the December meeting, because we'll have some, obviously, an idea of where we're going to land. So right now, we're trying to budget, and we're trying to figure out where different budgets are for technology and for furniture and things like that, when we really need to wait and see what the bids come in for the construction of the project first, and then go from there. But it's exciting. It's been lots of meetings. It's worse than building a house, I can tell you that. But it'll be one of the bigger projects that we'll talk about in December for sure.
Thank you very much. Moving on to LMRC.
We did meet this month. We talked about just a few things around making sure that everyone was following contract language specific to some things in terms of paperwork, and making sure that they're following policies and procedures, as well as we had a conversation about advisory, as we did in negotiations of what that looks like, and what the obligations for our staff is for those advisory periods. So we just revisited that a little bit, and continue to have just a working conversation around the fact that this has been a trying year for people with a lot of change, and so it's taking its toll. I think people will be ready I think they were ready for Thanksgiving break, but I think they'll for sure be ready for holiday break. But that was what we talked about in LMRC.
All right, moving on to Student Achievement Committee.
Met again for Student Achievement Committee. We continued our conversation around that SWOT analysis that we started the month before, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We had gotten through strengths and weaknesses, and had some more conversation around opportunities and threats to what Pekin High is trying to do, and what we want our message to be moving forward. So we had another good conversation around that. We feel like through that conversation, we've also been able to pinpoint, I think, some things that make Pekin High stand out, as well as some perceptions that we know we're going to have to figure out how to combat as we work towards what the mission and vision of Pekin High is, and then how we market that more specifically. So it was another month in the step of the plan, and then hopefully December will give us some clarity as to some main points that we can pull out of these last 3-4 months of conversation, which will help us move forward then into next semester. So.
Thank you very much. FOIA requests.
I thought we only had one FOIA request, but apparently one got lost in the mail, so I have two. We have one FOIA request from the Better Government Association that filed a FOIA around wanting collective bargaining agreements, administrator contracts, our budget, any legal settlements, and our payroll. So most of that was directed to different points on our website, as well as providing some documentation. And then we had another one, which has been one that we get every so often from Smart Procure, about asking for all of our purchasing records. And somehow that got lost in the mail. I never received it, but they wanted all the purchasing records from June 9th of this year on. So we sent that in today once we actually got that via email. So that was the second one.
Thank you very much. And last thing, superintendent's report.
I have nothing. Other than I think Triple I went well. I think it was a good conference. Obviously the sessions There's always, those can be hit or miss, but I think there were some good sessions. Joe London was interesting about to hear speak, but it was a good time and a good professional development as well.
All right, we'll give you a break now. And Mrs. Bloom, curriculum update.
Okay, so next month I'll be coming to you with official requests for course changes and new courses that are proposed for 2017-18. So this is your sneak peek. There are not nearly as many as last year when we were getting ready to implement a 7-period day. There are a few, so I'll just go through those by department. No new courses in the art area. However, we are looking at reinstating Art 2 as a prerequisite for photography, which is something that existed for many years. We took that out a few years ago, and the request has been made to reinstate that due to curriculum that the teachers and department feel are missing in that particular course. CTE does not have any new courses proposed for next year. However, it does look very likely that if Joel Steger has his ways with ICC, that we will have some more dual credit opportunities, specifically in areas of C++, welding, and basic. And then possibly some additional licensure opportunities in childcare, Auto 2, and some opportunities in our food handler safety for childcare and culinary arts. And those are always nice to just have for our students so that it's one more leg up when they leave us. It's another opportunity for them to just kind of walk right into. Math is proposing a new course in general stats. We have an AP stats course obviously right now, but one area that they have felt for years has been lacking is in that mainly fourth year math elective for students that do not wish to go the AP route. And stats is something that's obviously important for many students when they go into college. So that is a course they would like to offer for 11th and 12th grade students with a prerequisite of completion of Algebra 3-4. And then they are requesting to rename their integrated math sequence so that it aligns better with our other math sequences, which actually doesn't change their curriculum at all. It just basically keeps it in line with what our other math courses are titled. Music is proposing a percussion class, which would be a general elective for students 9 through 12. I would compare it to our guitar class that's semester long, an opportunity for students who don't necessarily want to commit to band as a 4-year thing, but are interested in maybe picking up a little bit of music experience. Just louder, and I think parents might appreciate them doing that here at school rather than at home. Science is not proposing new courses, but they would like to rename what is currently Geology 1-2 to be Earth and Environmental Science, which would be more in keeping with the current NGSS standards that they have been working very hard to align their curriculum to. That would come with some revision to the curriculum itself, but basically is keeping our Geology 1-2 course with some updates. And then special education is proposing an introduction to zoology class that would be for both our 10 and 30 level LD and CC students in 11th through 12th grades. It would be a science elective a full year, which is an exciting opportunity because we don't have that many science electives for students in those particular course sequences. And then they also would like to propose an introduction to software applications course for 9th through 12th in the LDCC pathway. One area that they continue to struggle with, mainly with incoming 9th grade students, is helping the students find general elective options that are appropriate for them as they start to transition into high school. And some of those elective opportunities they have right now are just a little bit much of a jump with where they are coming into us. So this would be a course taught by a special education teacher in keeping with what we do in introduction to software applications, and then hopefully making a better transition if that's something they want to take for them to be successful in doing so. And then they have some changes in practice, looking at their work seminar, work supervision, that those aren't actually changes to the course curriculum, it's ways that we carry them out. So I can give you some more information on that next month if you'd like. And then another thing that they would like to do, which is a change of practice, not a change in what we have in writing, is begin to provide personal development, which is a course already on our books, to students opposite of the semester they take health their 9th grade year, which basically extends health into a year-long curriculum, which would be beneficial for many of the students that they look for that 9th grade year. And that's it. Oh yes, no, how did I forget that? The two things that it's on the back of my sheet. The two big ones that I know we've mentioned actually before to you are instituting an ICC partnership for students to be able to take a part-time schedule here with qualifications their senior year and pick up courses at ICC. Some of which those courses would then transfer back to us as transfer credits, some which may not, depending on the course that they're taking. We've had a lot of conversations with department chairs and administratively about should a course that we offer as an elective here at PCHS be allowed to be taken at ICC, and we've said in some situations yes, probably, but it shouldn't replace our course. We don't want to axe out any of our electives. However, if a student wants to take sociology, for example, if they take it here, and then they want to go and take it at ICC also, because that's a very common general elective that students take at ICC. We don't have an issue with that, but we want them to take it here, and we don't want them to replace the credit that they get here in the grade with what they would receive at ICC. Some courses that ICC does for general electives we don't offer here. A good example of that would be film appreciation. I'm sure some students would love to take film appreciation, history of film. And that's not something we offer here, so if they would want to take that at ICC, they could bring that back as a transfer elective to us, just as a general elective course. So that's something that we are working with and have a meeting to finalize some of that material with ICC at the end of next week, and then we would be bringing forth to you an intergovernmental agreement between our board and ICC's board for students to be allowed to do that, and that would come to you next month. And then the other general course proposal or opportunity would be for students to be able to, during their senior year, if they have met certain requirements, to take a part-time schedule here and be able to complete an internship outside in our community. We would not be offering credit for students to do that in the sense of transferring credit back to us. However, those students would need to be far enough in their classes here that wouldn't be a concern for them, and there would be vetting processes that we would go through to approve the internships that they would take with these companies, and some understandings of what students need to be able to do and be successful in those particular internships. But that's something that I think a lot of the counselors and especially our CTE department is very excited about that opportunity. We have a lot of businesses knocking on our door wanting our students. We just haven't had the availability to do that until recently. Now that is it.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
Will Carly be teaching the percussion class?
Yes.
She's very good. I've seen her in action.
I think one of the things that's exciting is, and it's this time of the year, every year, but we continue to bring forward different opportunities for students. I think what you see or will see in December as a result, some of which of going to a 7-period day where students are going to have hopefully a little bit more time in their schedule, especially junior and senior year, if they're successful in the first couple of years, that provide them some opportunities, not to just be successful here, but really put them on a path and start strongly linking them to what their future is going to be, whether it's an internship, whether it's work at ICC because they're going to already work towards an associate's degree, or they want transfer credit because they're going to a 4-year university. So it's super exciting, for us to be able to start to offer some things and be able to pursue some different partnerships. We are going to have a career fair here for the first time in January, and part of that career fair, I believe, is also asking businesses who potentially want interns, from Pekin High to also be at that career fair. It'll be a nighttime event where parents and students will be invited to attend, and it'll give our local businesses and an opportunity to come in and students to see what else is out there as they start to hopefully wrap their mind around life outside of Pekin High. So super exciting. The only other thing I forgot to mention is we've talked about that human anatomy course that Tremont has graciously asked us to be a part of, and we have six seniors and 1 junior who have been accepted to that. So in January, they will start meeting twice a week at Pekin Hospital with human cadavers and doctors, and we'll start working on, Mr. Howard, your face is cracking me up. I feel the same way, but the kids are super excited. We have 3 staff members who are going to help proctor those evenings, and for someone who's pre-med or thinks they're pre-med, what a great opportunity to be able to work with physicians and to truly get their hands into what they think they want to do. So
Back in the day, the frog tore me up.
yeah, I know, I agree.
Larry, don't you volunteer at the hospital? Maybe you can help them there.
Yeah, I'll help her out.
They've invited me to come, and I really would like to see the kids in action, but there'd have to be things that I couldn't see. I don't know. I don't know if I can handle it, but that's exciting. So.
It's all very, very exciting. One question, and you might have said it, but my head was swimming with everything you were just saying. With the ICC, you said intergovernmental agreement. Does that mean, will the students still have to pay for classes at ICC?
They will. One of the things ICC has encouraged us to do, though, is to sign an additional agreement that our students would put in for Pell Grants, and that they're different in the sense that they're only for high school students pursuing credits through a college. And so that would allow them to be able to tap into some federal money if they so choose to, and if they qualify, and thus not have to pay for some of the costs of those courses. It is really possible. We thought that this sounded crazy when we first started talking to ICC, but it's possible that a student could graduate from our school having nearly 15 hours of college credit under their belt if they took advantage smartly of courses that would transfer back to other colleges and partook some of our AP courses. And I mean, that's a huge chunk of change off of theirs or their parents or their families' college tuition. So that's something I'm really excited about. Probably a small cost up front, but not nearly as much as, a semester at a 4-year university.
And of course, that is something they've been able to do in the computer technology area with ICC to the tune of about 24 hours.
Any other questions? All right, moving on, is there any future agenda item that a board member wishes to put on the agenda? Move on to announcements then. Just a reminder, Thursday, December 8th is the Central Illinois Valley Division meeting at Metamora Fields Golf Course. Registration's at 5:30, dinner at 6, and should be over by 8 o'clock. Please let Mr. White know if you plan to attend no later than tomorrow. And final thing, the next regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting, Board of Education meeting is scheduled for December 19th here in this boardroom at 6:30. I know of no further action to come before the board, so we stand adjourned.